My name is Jacob. I'm 49 years old. For the past 15 years, I've lived just outside Seattle in a house I bought, filled with people who share nothing with me but proximity and need. My wife, Rachel, and her daughter from a previous marriage, Hannah, moved in when Hannah was 8. She was small then, quiet, not yet cruel. Her biological father? A rumor, an echo in the hallway. He sent birthday cards with names scrawled like he'd barely remembered them in time. Once a year, if that. No phone calls, no child support, no weekends with him, just silence. And then a box of nothing from Amazon. He was a myth. I was the reality. I was the one who showed up to the parent-teacher nights, who paid for orthodontics when her teeth came in crooked. When she got into the arts magnet school, I worked weekends to cover the extra costs. I gave up vacations to pay for her dance classes. I sat through every recital, every awkward school play, filming with shaky hands while she scanned the audience, never looking for me. I never asked her to call me Dad, never even hinted at it. I thought if I gave enough, she'd give something back. Not love, not even affection, just acknowledgement, a thank you, a nod. But silence was her native tongue, and she spoke it fluently. Still, I stayed. I held the roof over our heads, paid the mortgage, covered car insurance, groceries, health coverage, new shoes every time she outgrew the old ones. I bought her first phone when she turned 12, upgraded it every 2 years like clockwork, set up her college fund before she even finished middle school. Love, I believed, was action, not a title. I told myself it didn't matter what she called me, only what I did. But it did matter. It mattered in the 1,000 tiny ways I went unacknowledged. I was the man who kept the lights on, but never the man who got invited into the room. Rachel, my wife, she said nothing. She watched it happen year after year like it was some natural process, like water running downhill. She'd give me these tired eyes and say things like, "She's just a teenager," or "She doesn't mean anything by it," and I believed her, at first. But years stack like bricks, and weight has a way of announcing itself. When Hannah turned 16, I bought her a used Civic. Spent 3 months fixing it up after work. I taught her how to change the oil, how to listen for engine sounds. She posted a picture of it the next day with the caption, "So lucky. My mom always comes through." I stared at that post longer than I care to admit. Read the comments from her friends. "Your mom's the best. Wish mine cared that much." All those hearts and emojis. Rachel showed me the photo at dinner like it was some shared achievement. I smiled, but inside something cracked. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even about credit. It was the erasure, the way I had become invisible in the story I helped write. She went off to college in Denver 2 years later. I helped her tour campuses. I co-signed her lease, paid her deposit, bought her furniture, delivered it myself, set up the utilities, paid for everything. She called once a week, maybe when something broke or she needed money. Never to say thank you, never to ask how we were. Her calls had timestamps, not warmth. I started calling it the faucet. When it dripped even once, I came running. And then came the Vienna semester, a summer arts program she was desperate to attend. $8,000 for the tuition alone. Flights, housing, spending money, I don't even remember the final number. I just remember looking at my savings account and realizing I would never retire comfortably. Not anymore. She got in, of course. Rachel cried when the acceptance letter arrived. I wrote the check that night. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling Instagram at the office during a late shift. There she was, Hannah, standing on a bridge in Vienna. The caption read, "Grateful for my family. I wouldn't be here without you." No tag, no mention, just a sentence. Vague, sanitized. I clicked the comments. "You and your mom are so inspiring. Your mom really raised a queen. So beautiful. You got her strength." I stared at that screen like it might apologize. Like maybe the next swipe would show a second post, something smaller, more private. Maybe a thank you buried in a story. But there was nothing. Just that bridge. That caption. "Grateful for my family." I read it again, and again, and again. I didn't expect praise. I didn't need a parade. But that sentence was a bullet. Not because it was cruel, but because it was precise. Because it erased me so cleanly, I couldn't even bleed. I showed Rachel later that night. Her eyes scanned the post. She blinked, handed the phone back, and said, "She probably didn't mean anything by it." I nodded. Of course not. That night, I lay in bed next to a woman who had never once told her daughter, "He's the reason you have what you have." I stared at the ceiling and thought, this is the life I built. This is the gratitude I bought. I had become the scaffolding of someone else's life. Necessary, but never seen. Years passed in this quiet exile. Each year, the balance tipped a little further. Hannah stopped coming home for holidays. Too busy. Too far. She sent gifts with Rachel's name on the card. Never mine. When her grandmother died, I paid for the flight back, picked her up at the airport, carried her bags to the car. She cried into Rachel's arms and walked right past me. On the drive home, she looked out the window the whole time. I thought maybe, just maybe, one day she'd realize it. After graduation, after she found work, when the world got cold, when the bills came, maybe then she'd think of me, not as a father, but as a man who showed up when it mattered. But some debts don't collect interest. Some go unpaid forever. There was a picture I kept on my desk at work. The three of us at a beach in Oregon. Hannah was 12. She was holding my hand in that photo, laughing, hair tangled from the wind. I used to look at that photo during long shifts, when I needed to believe it had all meant something. One day I threw it away, just opened the drawer, slid it into the trash, and closed the drawer again. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing, and that nothing stayed with me. It was the beginning of something I hadn't allowed myself before. Distance. Not physical. Emotional. Spiritual. The slow drawing back of a man who finally understood his place in the story. Not father. Not mentor. Not guide. Just a man in the background. Paying. Carrying. Disappearing. I thought that night would be different. It was her graduation dinner. The culmination of every bill I'd paid. Every long night I'd worked overtime. Every decision I'd made to put her first. A private room in a restaurant overlooking Puget Sound, her favorite. I rented it out for the evening, arranged the menu, paid extra for the wine Rachel liked, booked flights for Rachel's sisters, even covered the hotel costs for Hannah's friends flying in from Denver. Everything about the night was perfect. On paper, Hannah walked in wearing a dress Rachel had picked out, pearl earrings I'd paid for, and that quiet confidence of a girl raised to believe life would always catch her. She hugged her mother, smiled politely at me, sat at the center of the long table like a monarch. The food was served. Toasts were made. Her uncle stood, spoke about her work ethic. One of her professors, a woman I'd never met, praised her potential. Rachel cried. I nodded, smiled, laughed where I was supposed to. I watched the candlelight flicker across Hannah's face and thought, this is it. This is the moment she finally sees what I've done. I waited until the plates were cleared, until the room was soft with full bellies and wine. Then I stood, reached into my jacket, and pulled out the small box I'd carried all day. A necklace, silver, understated, engraved with 4 words, "You were never alone." I handed it to her in front of everyone. She opened the box, looked at it for barely a second. Then, without even lifting her eyes from the table, she said, "You're not my father. Stop calling yourself that." The room collapsed. Forks stopped. Glasses froze midair. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. Her aunt muttered something under her breath. Even the waiter paused in the doorway, unsure whether to leave or apologize. I didn't speak. I didn't move. Not because I was stunned, but because something inside me had already accepted it. As if my body had known this moment was coming, and was just waiting for my mind to catch up. I sat down slowly, folded my hands in my lap, and stared at the tablecloth. The food in front of me smelled like sawdust. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel heat in my face. There was no panic. Just the dull sound of the truth landing like a stone on tile. Rachel said nothing. Not then. Not on the drive home. Not when we climbed into bed and lay side by side in the dark. She turned to the wall and said she was tired. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if that necklace was already in a bathroom trash can. At 2:17 a.m., I got out of bed. I sat in my office with the door closed and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen felt surgical. Clean. Cold. I began with the university portal. Tuition for the next semester was due in 3 weeks. I canceled the automatic payment. Next was the apartment lease. A cozy 2-bedroom near campus I had co-signed for. I contacted the landlord, told him I wouldn't be renewing, and that my name would be off the lease by the end of the month. No explanation, just facts. Then the bank. I disabled the card linked to her account, called the provider, removed her from my insurance, closed the dental plan, canceled the flight for her summer internship in Chicago, wrote a short, polite email to the arts coordinator. Hannah will no longer be attending. Please release her spot. Finally, I climbed the stairs. The hallway was silent. Rachel's breath was steady behind the bedroom door. I walked into the guest room, the one we converted for Hannah when she came home during breaks. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out the laptop I'd bought her 2 years ago. It was still plugged in. Battery full. I took it, walked back to my office, and locked it in the drawer where I keep old tax returns. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was clarity. She had drawn the line, named it, announced it in front of strangers and family alike. She wasn't mine. Never had been. And if that was the case, if I was truly not her father, then it was time I stopped living like one. By the time the sun came up, Hannah's safety net had vanished. Quietly, efficiently, without drama. She called at 7:41 a.m. I let it ring. She texted at 8:03. I think there's something wrong with my card. At 8:16. My school account says payment is overdue? What happened? By 9:30, the voicemails began. First calm, then confused, then indignant. By noon, she was screaming. I listened to exactly one of them. Her voice was high, sharp, breaking between panic and rage. You can't just do this. You can't punish me because you didn't get your little moment. What the hell is wrong with you? You're an adult. You don't cut someone off because they don't want to play your fake family game. You're sick. You're sick. I deleted the message. Rachel was still in bed when I came upstairs. Her eyes were open, unfocused. She's calling me, she said quietly. I nodded. I imagined she would. I don't know what to say to her. That's your decision. She didn't ask what I had done. She didn't ask why. She knew. By evening, the text changed tone. Less rage, more fear. Screensh *TS of notices. We need to talk. You can't do this right now, I have deadlines. You're ruining my life. The last one said, Is this because of the necklace? Jesus Christ, grow up. I turned off my phone. The next day, a letter arrived. Postmarked from Denver. 3 pages. Handwritten. It started with, I don't know why you're acting this way. The rest was a tirade. I was controlling. I used money to manipulate her. I forced myself into a role I was never invited to play. She accused me of trying to buy her, of making everything about myself, of using generosity as a *P***N. Not one word about the necklace. Not one line of gratitude for the years, the rent, the tuition, the medical bills, the groceries, the art classes, the phone plans, the shoes. Nothing. Just blame. Like I had failed a test she never told me she was giving. I read it once, folded it neatly, placed it in the drawer with the laptop. Then I made a pot of coffee and sat in silence. I watched the sun hit the trees. I listened to the world move on. And I realized something with the weight of absolute certainty. I didn't lose a daughter. I never had one. What I had was a contract, unspoken but deeply enforced. I was the man who paid, who showed up, who shut up. And the moment I asked for something real, not love, not acknowledgement, just decency, I was told to disappear. So I did. She called 34 times that day. 34 voicemails, texts, Screensh asterisk TS, emails. Her voice cracked and sharpened across them like a knife dragged over glass. From disbelief to fury to threats. She cried. She shouted. She called me every name but father. You can't just erase me from your life. You'll regret this, Jacob. I hope you feel good watching me fall apart. You owe me. She used that word, oh, like I was some state agency gone rogue. Like I was derelict in my duties. Like she'd filed the paperwork, signed in triplicate, and was now furious the machine stopped running. What she didn't say, not once, was, I'm sorry. Not, I didn't mean it. Not, I understand. Not even my name. Just rage. Cold, hungry rage. Because her world was breaking where mine used to bend. Rachel tried to intervene. She always had that weakness, a kind of motherly guilt masquerading as diplomacy. She took Hannah's call in the kitchen, one hand over her mouth, the other shaking as she pressed the phone tighter to her ear. I watched from the hallway as her shoulders tensed. She kicked me out of the apartment, she said quietly afterward. Her voice was flat, eyes unfocused. Told me I chose you over her. Said I could find somewhere else to stay. She meant it. Rachel nodded slowly. I think she did. I waited for more. Some pushback. A defense. Protest. But none came. She just turned and walked into the bedroom. That night, I found the graduation dinner receipt on my desk. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe I wanted to remember how much a clean betrayal costs when it's plated with sea base and white linen. I sat at my desk with it, holding the strip of paper between my fingers like a verdict. $1,942.62. Before tip. I poured a drink. Bourbon. Straight. No ice. Then I opened the drawer. Pulled out the letter she'd sent. The one that arrived in that heavy envelope, like a threat wrapped in postage. I read it again, slower this time. Word by word. There were phrases in there that stuck like glass. You were never my parent. You don't get to make decisions about my life anymore. I never asked for you to step in. You've always made me feel like I was in your debt. We *P***nized the very things I gave freely. Every act of care now twisted into a noose she claimed I had tied around her neck. But the worst part wasn't the accusations. It was the certainty, the conviction with which she tore down the scaffolding I had built around her life. No recognition of what it took, what it cost. And I don't mean money. I mean time, tension, the kind of love that doesn't get written about, the kind you prove by staying, by enduring, by putting yourself second every day for a child who's not even yours. She tore that apart in 3 pages of ink. And I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel loss. I felt stillness. The kind of stillness that comes after the fire, when everything is ash and no one's left to ask what started it. She sent one more message that night. Just 5 words. You were never my family. That was the moment I let go. Not dramatically. Not all at once. No slamming doors or shattered glass. Just a quiet disconnection. Like a phone line going dead. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. Instead, I walked into the garage, stood beside my old truck, and stared at the passenger seat where she used to sit. All those drives. School drop-offs. Silent rides to dentist appointments. The time I waited outside her dance recital in the pouring rain because she said she forgot her umbrella. I got sick that night. Missed work the next day. She never thanked me. I told myself she was young. But she's not young anymore. She's grown. Sharp. Willing to use her pain like a scalpel to carve away the parts of life she no longer needs. And I was no longer needed. The next morning, Rachel asked if I'd reconsider. Not with anger, just weariness. She stood in the doorway with a cup of coffee, looking like a woman who no longer believed the bridge could be repaired but still hoped the river might shrink. She's scared, she said. She doesn't know what to do. She knew what to say at dinner. She didn't mean it. She meant it enough to say it out loud. She's not herself. She's spiraling. No, I said. She's exactly herself. This is who she is. This is who she's always been. Rachel flinched. I'm not going to play the villain, so she can keep pretending she's the victim. Silence. She said I used money to control her. I added. So I'm doing what she wants. I'm letting go. Rachel sat down. Didn't argue. We ate breakfast in silence. Two people who had once planned retirement together, now avoiding the word future entirely. The emails from the school started coming in next. Balance overdue. Payment required to hold classes. Financial aid office requesting updated information. I didn't open them. I just forwarded them to her. No subject line. No message. She stopped texting after a week. Stopped calling. But she didn't stop posting. Photos from the Vienna trip still went up. Old ones now. Recycled. Delayed uploads. Nostalgia posing as gratitude. And beneath every one, comments from friends. So beautiful. You're so lucky. Your mom is amazing. Family goals. I stopped reading them. There's a kind of madness in watching a person erase you in real time. Like you're slowly being photoshopped out of your own life. Cropped. Muted. Forgotten. The worst part? I didn't even feel erased anymore. I felt released. That terrified me. Because if I could let go that easily, if I could delete 15 years of sacrifice like a bad draft, then what did that say about me? What kind of man watches his legacy burn and just walks away? Maybe the kind who's been burning for years. I think about that necklace sometimes. I imagine it tossed in a drawer, gathering dust. Maybe she pawned it. Maybe she gave it away. Maybe it's hanging on a hook beside a dozen others, meaningless now. A relic from a man she claims never mattered. You were never alone. That's what it said. For words. And now, the silence between us says the rest. You were never mine. I don't wait for her messages anymore. There was a time I would check my phone like a ritual, morning, lunch, before bed, hoping for some note from her. A scrap of acknowledgement. A lifeline tossed back across the void. Even a question. How are you? Something small. Human. But that part of me is dead now. Starved into silence. I don't even flinch when her name appears on screen, though it rarely does. 2 months have passed since the night of the necklace, and Hannah has gone quiet. No apology. No reconciliation. Just silence. A heavy, perfect silence. At first, I thought it might be strategic, a pause before the next assault. But now I think she simply has nothing left to say. Not to me. Not to the man who paid for her childhood. Who vanished from her narrative the moment she stepped on stage. Rachel speaks less now, too. She moves through the house like a ghost wearing her own skin. The kitchen is quieter. The bedroom colder. There's a rift between us so wide it swallows whole conversations. She still tries, in her own way. She'll mention Hannah in passing, always vaguely, never directly. She texted about her apartment. She said she might get a job. She's thinking of switching majors. I nod. I don't ask questions. Rachel fills the silence, hoping I'll engage. I never do. We've become two people sharing a home, carrying a funeral no one dares pronounce. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I left. If I packed a bag, drove north, found a cabin and never returned. Would Rachel call? Would she chase? Or would she simply fold back into her old life? The one where I was never quite more than a placeholder? Some nights, I almost do it. I sit in my truck with the engine running, headlights slicing through the dark driveway. I picture the road ahead, clean and open. No obligations. No voices calling me from another room. No weight pressing into my chest every time I hear laughter that doesn't include me. But I never go. Not yet. Instead, I sit by the window, bourbon in hand, and watch the trees move. They bend with the wind, always bending. And I think, I bent too long. That's why I broke. People talk about forgiveness like it's a moral duty, as if holding on to pain is some failure of character. But sometimes, holding on is all that keeps you sane. All that reminds you you're still human. That you mattered once, even if only as a warning. Forgiveness, in this house, was a currency I spent recklessly. I forgave every slight, every insult, every cold shoulder. I forgave being excluded from family photos. I forgave being left off school forms. I forgave the holidays where my name was never on the gift tags. I forgave Rachel's silence, her refusal to demand better, to speak truth when it mattered. I forgave until I had nothing left. Now I keep the debt, and it's freeing. It's the freedom of no longer needing to be loved by people who treated you like furniture. It's the freedom of silence, of empty rooms, of knowing that your worth is no longer measured by how much you give away. I started running again. Mornings before work. 6 miles through the fog, past houses where lights are just starting to flick on. I don't wear a watch. I don't time myself. I just move. I sweat. I breathe. I listen to my feet striking pavement and think, I'm still here. I started painting again, too. Old canvases pulled from the garage, brushes stiff with dust. I don't paint anything anyone would recognize. Just shapes, movement, color. Things I can't say out loud. Sometimes I sign them. Sometimes I don't. Rachel walked in once, watched me from the doorway. Since when do you paint? She asked. I looked at her over my shoulder. Since I stopped financing someone else's indifference. She didn't reply. She hasn't asked again. Hannah, from what I hear, moved into a smaller place. Took on 2 part-time jobs. Deferred a semester. Rachel tried to spin it as independence. But I saw the worry in her eyes. The girl who once lived on my labor is now learning what it costs to live without a net. I should feel pity. I don't. Not because I want her to suffer, but because she made this choice. She stood in a room full of people and told the world I was not her father. Now the world is listening, and it's crueler than I ever was. I don't think she'll ever say sorry. Not because she's incapable of regret, but because sorry would mean admitting the lie. Admitting that I mattered, that I had been something real in her life. She can't do that. Her story only works if I'm the intruder, the imposter, the man who hovered at the edge of her childhood, giving nothing but rules and expectations. So she'll rewrite, revise. She'll tell her friends I was distant, that I tried to control her, that I made her uncomfortable, that I used money as a leash. Maybe one day she'll tell her children that her stepdad was never really family, just a man her mother married, just a wallet with a heartbeat. She's free to tell that story, and I'm free to forget her. That's what real freedom is. Not walking away but not looking back. I boxed up the photos, the old drawings, the report cards she used to leave on the fridge like trophies. They're in the attic now. I kept one picture, the beach in Oregon, before it all went dark. She's 12. She's laughing, holding my hand. I don't know if it was real, but I keep it. Not for her. For me. Because once I believed that being present was enough. That sacrifice would earn something. That if I gave long enough, hard enough, quietly enough, I would be seen. I was wrong. And I want to remember that, too. People ask me now if I have kids. I say no. Not out of spite. Out of truth. I raised a child. I did not have one. I poured everything I had into someone else's bloodline, thinking love could fill the gap. But love without acknowledgement is not love. It's labor. The servitude. It's a man spending 15 years learning that presence means nothing without permission. So I sit in this quiet house, surrounded by things I paid for but no longer owe anyone. I drink my bourbon. I run my miles. I paint my canvases. I live. And when people say, it's never too late to reconnect, I smile. Because some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some are meant to burn so brightly, they light the path forward. If she ever does call, truly call, not to demand, not to bargain, but to speak, I'll listen. But I won't wait. I'm done waiting. And if you think I was cruel, if you think I abandoned her or punished her or withheld love, I ask you this. If you spent 15 years raising another man's child, paying for everything, sacrificing your peace, and one day she stood in front of a room and said, "You're not my father," would you have stayed? Would you have forgiven? Or would you have done what I did? Let go. Walk away. And finally, breathe?